Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? Wouldn't you think I'm the girl?
Keep going.
Oh,
I love
Ariel. I don't know if I even remember all the lyrics.
Little Mermaid was my favorite Disney movie.
Little
It was
Mermaid.
good.
This week on Greatest Stories Never Told, we have the amazing Taryn Southern. Taryn is a content creator. She has 700 million views on her videos. She's the first person in the world to produce an album made with artificial intelligence. She directed a documentary called I Am Human that just premiered at Tribeca Film Festival. And my favorite part about Taryn is she just kicked cancer's ass. She was faced with a cancer that had taken the life of someone in her own family just 15 years ago, and she beat that shit. This interview is gonna blow your mind, and it could change your life if you apply what you learn. So stay tuned, because Taryn and I are about to go deep. I just have been really wanting to go deep in your Call Me Maybe cover. That's just been something that's on my mind, knowing this interview is coming.
Been just wreaking havoc on your soul, huh?
That song, what did it mean to you the first time
Call
you heard
Me
it?
Maybe. What an amazing
It's
track.
like, you know,
Carly Rae Jepsen.
it's like, does she want him to call or not? Or
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Does she want him to call or not?
Right.
Call me maybe.
or does she really want him to call and
So
she's
call
playing
me
hard to get,
maybe.
but she can't say like, don't call me because that looks too hard to
I
get.
think she wants him to call. I think she wants him to call, but she doesn't want to seem too desperate, so she's
Right.
saying call me maybe, but really she wants him to, and if he doesn't call her, she'll be upset and passive aggressive.
Yeah. And then there is that line in the song where the guy, where she says he takes his time with the call,
Oh,
you know?
gosh.
But it seemed like she kind of liked that.
When was this? This is like circa 2014, right? 2015? God, blast
Around then, yeah. I think that was a pinnacle point in our society, you know, when everyone was like really
in our
just
personal development as humans.
Yeah, it was like, you know, Tinder was just starting to fire.
Yeah.
And online dating, I think, went from being a nerd thing to a mainstream thing.
It was something people did in the shadows.
Yeah,
back
and then
then.
here
you
comes-
didn't talk about it.
Yes, and then everyone's doing it, but then here comes this song just talking about good old fashioned, like, here's my number, call me,
Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah.
Not for sure, but maybe. It was worthy of a cover.
It was totally worthy of a cover.
Yeah,
I don't even
so-
think I finished the cover. I think I made half of a cover of the.
Well, that
the
was
track.
what I wanted to really ask you about, because it was
Yeah.
like kind of meta. It
don't
was
think
like
there was a-
cover it maybe.
Right.
It wasn't the full cover.
It was half a cover.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Taryn Southern.
What an intro.
We can start there. We can even end there, because I'm sure your minds are just racing right now with the
blown.
possibility. Yeah. As I was watching your Bon Jovi video, which we need to talk about, we're going to get to how Taryn went from broadcast journalism to one of the premier Bon Jovi covers of the 2010 decade.
Really?
But I was watching that, and you're just like on stage, like rocking it.
Yeah.
But then I remember a couple of years ago, you were on stage and you were rocking it, but afterwards you asked, you're like, if anyone has any advice on how to rock the stage even more.
And you gave me some great tips. I think it's, yeah, when I'm in new environments, and I think I have a tendency to want to not know how to translate performance to different spaces. And when I'm in a new space and there's a different energy, my empath is like scanning the room, trying to determine where people are at energetically, and then I can't find myself easily slipping into a space where I know how to perform for that crowd, and then that just terrible anxiety overtakes me.
Oh, interesting. I think, though, it's actually, I'm going to guess, worked very positively for you, because I also see it as the never stop learning mentality, where there you are, someone who has a lot of experience that is still open to reaching the next level.
Thank you.
And I think that's a testament to show how much you've done in your still short life, you know?
Thank you.
So,
But I did find,
interesting.
I found cameras, coming from a theater background where I legitimately wanted to throw up every time
Yeah.
before going on stage, and then going into a world of cameras, that was so much easier because I knew I could do it over again. And then by the time I'd get to the third or fourth take, I was comfortable.
Got
So I think moving into the world of YouTube and moving into the world of creating my own content was actually a way of dealing with my insane anxiety and being in spaces that I had no control over, like audition rooms. And
Yeah.
once we get into more of that side of the career, there was just, I felt out of control versus putting together my own videos. I'd have my own space. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why the obsession with graduating early?
I was obsessed with it. I really was.
I can tell.
I think in part when I got down to Miami, I had a very tough freshman year. I was really lonely. I didn't have many friends, and I think Miami was just, if Kansas is like an apple, Miami's not even in the fruit category. Like it's.
Or if it is,
It
it's
was
the
being
woman dancing
served
with the
in-
fruit on her head, right? That's like 6 feet tall.
It was being served something so unrecognizable that I was really out of my comfort zone there, and so I think on some level it was a desire to escape that situation and get out into the real world. And I also felt so ambitious, like I just wanted to be doing what I loved, and I knew that was creating, and I knew that was
Doing it so it
injecting-
counts for more than credits.
more than
perhaps?
credits and more than just, I think a lot of the school work I felt some of it was really interesting and I enjoyed, and other elements of it felt like just things you have to check off to get to the next level
Gotcha.
of something that was actually interesting or valuable.
Yeah.
And so I was really keen on getting done so that I could
Okay.
get out in the world. And I also felt like I had this weird thing where I felt like the younger I could start out my career, the younger I could be in starting out my career, the less pressure I would put on myself. Almost like I was granting myself a few bonus years because I knew everyone else was graduating college between
real,
the ages
though.
of 22 and 24.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, if I'm 19, 20 and I'm out there, if I fail for 2 years straight, I'm still entering the same playing field as everyone else at 22. So I'm giving myself 2 extra years to fail. And I think that maybe also because I'm a little bit of a risk a lot of a risk mitigator, and that's just how I think all the time. It felt like a really happy place to be in terms of mitigating risk.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've had a lot of those same, I don't know if it's like faux rationality around my age. And, I have to be the youngest person in the room. Or when I get to be this age and I'm in this room, I have to be at this level of success. Otherwise, I feel weird.
It's the reality, right? Like we can look at people who are 22 and you could have someone that's 35 accomplish something amazing, but not be recognized for it at the same level that someone at 22, it'd be like, look
So
at that
true.
wonder kid
Yeah.
who just sold their company, or
That's so true.
they get all these extra bonus points.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this weird thing. I went through Tony Robbins, and I discovered that I was chasing significance for a big period of my life.
Oh, wow.
And on that note, I have some weird things I probably need to go to years of therapy to overcome. But when I turned 40, I had this realization, I'm never going to be on a 40 under 40 list. They've all passed me by. And I'd already had passed the 30 under 30,
Yes.
And it was just like, what does that mean? But it's funny because, as you mentioned, if someone does something at a certain age, then you get all these lists and you're recognized. And all
That's
this,
funny that you say that, because I remember turning 30 and having that same, I had this sinking feeling of I just wasn't quite good enough.
Yeah, you're not the
make one of
whiz
the
kid
30 on
anymore.
30.
Yeah, and you want to.
Yeah.
I had this attachment also because when I was coming up in marketing and learning marketing, I was the kid in the back of the room taking notes, and then once in a while I'd say something, the guys would be like, "Oh, that kid's smart," and so I had this image in my head that I was like the smart kid. And then one day I look in the mirror and I got wrinkles and receding hairline and 4.0 on my license, and it's like, oh, I'm not the kid anymore. Am I okay? Like, did I go far enough?
And here
what
you
is this
are in
new
this
role?
beautiful home,
You
and
know,
doing so well, but you're still stuck.
Thank you,
still
but
see
still
in your own brain, you've had a hard time seeing yourself outside of this lens that you've operated in for 20 years.
Yeah, you know what it is? This is funny. See how this interview is now turned to your let me lay down on this couch right here. I think in a lot of ways I am just really comfortable. I was really comfortable being the hungry kid who is only being judged on how many books I'm reading and the questions I'm asking and how much like curiosity I have, and not on the results that are measurable. And now that it's measurable, it's like, whoa, people can look and be specific and be like, you did this or this or this.
Does it feel
or not.
uncomfortable to evolve
know?
into that new space? Or do you like that?
It's been, it's a great question. I think I am not as comfortable as I used to be, but I'm getting more comfortable with it.
Nice.
Now that I meet 20-year-old kids who are whiz copywriters and marketers, and they're asking me for advice, and I was like thinking, no, I'm same as you. And I was like, oh, wait a second. No, I'm actually, now I'm closer to the age of 50 than I am to 20. It's just a weird thing.
Right.
Yeah. Kevin, feel free to edit this out later if my rambling ends up sounding boring. Okay, so. I love hearing this. All right. I want to talk about Taryn more. Getting off the couch here. So, did you want to graduate to become a broadcast journalist then?
I think by the time I graduated, I realized that I didn't totally know anymore. I'd had an idea in high school, and then once I'd gone through school, I had also done an internship at the Miami NBC station with the investigative journalism department, which was one of the few investigative journalism departments still around, and I'm still friends with my old boss from that department. And it was a different experience than what I had in my mind. And I was really uncertain that I wanted to go into investigative journalism at that point. I also saw that things were changing dramatically because MySpace had just become popular. Digital media was this kind of unknown question mark as to how it would impact journalism, but it was there. And so I felt uncertain is the short answer. And but I knew that there was a lot of opportunity out there, particularly in Los Angeles. I had sent in a tape to Discovery Channel. They had been looking for a female host with an anthropology background, and because I had graduated with a degree in anthropology, I thought I'll send a tape in. End up being flown to their headquarters and testing for this show. And while I didn't get the final job, that experience led me to getting an agent in LA.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To be an on-camera host.
To be an
at
on-camera
this point.
host.
Okay.
Yes.
And when MySpace came around, were you putting things out as far as even like the bulletins on the board and actively posting on social media in those early days?
Right when I moved to LA, I started to. And it
just
wasn't
like friendly
really,
content,
it wasn't a
not
thing
really.
yet for people to post publicly about themselves. It was just, I think there
Right.
was
It was
still,
more commentary, right?
yeah. A lot of people, that's why they had these screen names that weren't their real names, because
That's a good point.
You wanted to maintain some sense of privacy. It was like you didn't want to fully put yourself out there because who knows what information people might glean from you. And there was just definitely some caution around it. But I moved to LA. I had this agent who was wonderful, who I'm still close with, and started going out on these hosting auditions. And within a couple of months, I was just so fortunate. I booked work and was able to pay, all of my bills. I was like the Verizon VCast girl. I did these shows on the flip phones for Verizon VCast.
Like commercial type stuff or hosting?
Hosting.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
It would be like a weekly show about video games or entertainment, pop culture. And then I'd say 4 or 5 months after moving to LA, 2 of my friends and I, we sold a show to DirecTV where we traveled the world and met our MySpace friends. That was the concept of our show. It was called Project My World.
That would be like my dream.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And so that was the first project that I really set up, and I learned how to produce, and I learned how to pitch ideas and how to build your own, if you can't score the job through an audition, then just go do it yourself.
Yeah.
And that was such a big learning experience for me in that way. Like, yes, there are these opportunities that I can go after through auditioning, but I could also create my own destiny. And that was the beginning of, I think, me starting to experiment with what I could make on my own without anyone's approval or writing a check.
Okay, gotcha.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying these stories as much as I am. I want to know from you, who should I interview next? Maybe it's your favorite celebrity, your favorite athlete, your favorite author, or just someone you know who has a story that's never been told before. Comment below, let me know who it is, and then hit that subscribe button so you get notified when I interview the person that you pick.
Did you have a secret desire to be a singer as a kid?
I always loved it. It never felt like it was even on the table for me. That seemed like even acting was sort of in my purview as a possible career. Like I could be a starving actor.
Yeah.
But I didn't even have in my head any notion that pursuing music or pursuing career as an artist was even possible.
Just seemed even more of a risk than
Yeah,
acting,
I was like,
perhaps?
I would just be homeless if I did that. Like
Well,
in
that's
my
something-
mind,
yeah.
that was all I could see was homelessness. So
Something Sarah and I talk about is there's so many amazing singers in the world. Like, if you go on
Incredible.
YouTube and just Google acoustic cover of any song,
Yeah.
you'll find 10 versions that are as good as the original singer or better
yes.
from people you've never heard.
So many amazing. I mean, there's just so much talent out there, and I felt that. And I
Yeah.
also just always thought I wasn't. And I still to this day I would maintain the position that I'm not good enough. That you either have to be so good that you just blow the socks off of everyone, or you have to be someone that has been just working your tail off in that specific direction for years and years and years and have a very specific vibe and kind of sound and uniqueness that you bring to the table.
Like a Carly Rae Jepsen. for
Sure.
example.
Or
Yeah.
or a hit song, you know, or
Yeah.
or connections that I did not have growing up in Kansas. So to me, like that world was always just out of reach.
Okay.
I pursued music only so much as almost like someone who runs marathons for the
Just for that.
extracurricular
Yeah.
challenge of doing it,
Yeah.
but not with any end goal in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to dive back into that, but I want to hear on-camera host who discovers YouTube.
Yeah.
That must have been a pivotal moment.
It was. It was.
Or not
I-
at first.
I
Did it start off
remember-
as a hobby?
No,
'Cause
I remember it
For the folks at home who are just learning about Taryn for the first time, you were one of the OGs of YouTube. You have, over 700 million views. You've got a long history of videos covering a really diverse range.
Yeah.
And so,
Many of
how
which
did it-
I've
how did it
taken
start?
down.
And how many views does Tiggy have on YouTube?
That's a good question.
Oh,
Probably quite
you've
a few.
taken down videos. I didn't
I've
think
taken
about
down over
that.
250 videos.
I should make that as a sign off on this podcast. When people come on, they got to share with me the deleted.
Yes.
Social media
yes.
posts.
Well, I'm sure that's the thing. Once something's up online, it's never really gone.
That's the good point.
So
Yeah.
we
Okay.
can talk about that too. But I've deleted a lot.
Okay.
When I first, so I was working as a host, starting to dabble in acting on the side because I was making a living, and my agents were like, "Why not start going out on auditions?" So it was kind of this fun new challenge, and I happened to be in one of the supermarkets in LA, and on the cover of Wired magazine was this girl Jessica Rose, and Jessica Rose was the star of this YouTube series called Lonely Girl 15.
Yes, I met her through you a
Yes.
long time ago when I was a club promoter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I see this girl on the cover of Wired, and at the time, everyone thought that she was a real girl uploading vlogs. And this magazine cover broke the secret that she was actually an actress who had been hired on Craigslist to star in this YouTube series. And it had become hugely popular. It was getting millions of views every single day she'd upload a vlog. She was funny, she was clever, and it was all scripted. And it blew people's minds because you felt like you were really in her bedroom interacting with her. And I was like, that is brilliant. I've never heard or even, it blew my mind to even think about this new form of entertainment that is quasi-real.
Yeah.
I just didn't even know what to think of it. And it just so happened that she had the same manager as I did. So I reached out to the manager. I said, I have to meet this girl. And so he put us on a date together and we fell in love. We became like very close friends, and to this day we're very close friends. She moved back to Australia, but she was really the pioneer of this whole thing. And I thought, wow, if she you know, she wasn't worried about going out for auditions and being seen because she already had an audience of 2 million plus people tuning in every day to her vlogs. And I found that so freeing and exciting that this was sort of created out of nothing. And there was no money to be made on YouTube yet. It was just a platform for an audience, but I found that really interesting. And so that same year, maybe a few months after that moment, I made my first YouTube video, which was a satire of a video that had gone viral that year. Obama Girl had become this overnight sensation for her song, I Got a Crush on Obama. This is previous to Obama running in the primaries.
Oh, wow.
And so I made a spoof of that for Hillary Clinton. It was a lesbian
this is like
love song.
2007. Okay.
Yep. So it was, I Got a Crush on Hillary, Hot for Hillary. And that video also went viral. And then
what was viral back then? Because I think it's different now, right?
Yeah, it is very
like
different.
back then, if you got 10,000 views, was that like pretty
I think
amazing?
the video had like 2 million,
Which
something
is
like that.
fucking gigantic at that time, right?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what was considered big. I don't remember.
I remember as a user back then,
Yeah.
if you saw something with more than 1 million, you'd be like, I need to watch this because of the social proof. You'd be like, all 1 million people watch this?
Right.
I need to see what are they talking about.
Yes.
So 2 million
It was
is,
enough to get all these political talk shows were calling me. Chris Matthews had me on his show 4 times to talk about politics. And I didn't make this video to become a political correspondent. I made it just to be silly. But the fact that it worked, it completely shifted my my mind. I think it completely shifted my quest around what I was doing in LA, because I was, at that point, I was still very much feeling like I was playing the game of Hollywood, and there was a lot of rules and a lot of players and a lot of gatekeepers that you had to kind of get through, and it was overwhelming and exhausting and a little bit daunting. And then here was this new playing ground that had no rules and had no gatekeepers and had no one there to tell you no, you couldn't.
That was your first video?
Yeah.
So you, boom, home run, first at bat.
Sort of. It was both a home run, and at the same time, my agents at the time were terrified because they felt they had no control over it. It was a little bit of a scandalous video, in the sense that it was racy, right? I was like singing about my love for Hillary Clinton. It was meant to be comedy, but from their point of view, I'm trying to be this sort of serious host.
Yes.
How does this compete with this image that I'm now making these kind of salacious comedy videos on YouTube? And I think I didn't even know what it was going to do and if it could hurt what I was working on.
Have you met Hillary?
No.
Do we know if she has seen the video?
We do know that she's seen the video.
We do
I don't
for a
know what
fact.
she thinks about it.
Has anyone tried to connect you?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone has ever tried. That would be awesome, actually, to sit down with her and say, how did you feel back then?
Yeah.
Did you feel like I took advantage of your feminine wiles?
Yeah. Bless Fascinating.
Her heart.
So that was the first one. So they were the agents were like, don't do this without talking to us next time? Or?
They were nervous.
Yeah.
They were like, what are people going to think? And, you're hosting the Golden Globes red carpet for NBC, but you've also got this like lesbian love song thing going on YouTube. And I tried to tell them like, well, it's just like an SNL sketch. Just think of it like Lonely Island. And they were like, yeah, but it's not SNL, it's YouTube. So I really started learning that there was people hadn't yet formed an idea in their head of what YouTube was. It was not cool yet to be on YouTube.
Was the noise around your piece big enough that the YouTube folks themselves were reaching out to you and being like, hey, thanks, or let's talk, and all that? Or were they embracing
the other YouTube content creators?
No, like the executives at YouTube or whoever, or did they even have people there that worked with content creators?
Ironically, the guy who produced the Obama Girl video, I had reached out to him.
Okay.
We had become friends, and he'd sort of helped talk me through what he knew of the YouTube world. He ended up becoming the president of YouTube space, YouTube content, like creator division, and then later president of the originals. So it was funny, like his career, he started out actually just making these videos, and then
wow.
later became like the guy at YouTube. So I had some communication with people at YouTube, but very minimally, yeah.
But that was a sign for you that you felt that you could put things out there, though there wasn't money attached to it.
There was no money, but there was this notion that I could put something out and be seen for it.
And get an audience.
And that I could invent myself in that way. Like I could reinvent myself if I wanted to do XYZ, but I wasn't getting hired to do that thing in LA in the traditional Hollywood industry. Why not make it myself and put it out online?
So that was kind of the start of your like comedy
That's right.
career phase.
Yeah. So I started acting. I started booking some guest starring roles on television. My first one was Rules of Engagement, which was David Spade's show on CBS. I had a reoccurring role in that series. And it had taken me several years to get to the point where I could book from auditions. And it was hard. It was just really, really hard to book roles. I also think I probably wasn't great at auditioning due to my anxiety and my nerves. And so I was always working against that. And so whenever I could in my spare time, I would make these comedy videos. And because the Hot for Hillary video had done well, and it was a song, I thought, well, I'll just do more musical comedy. I know how to do that. So I kept making musical comedy videos, and I made a series called Private High Musical, which was like a dirty, what really goes on in high school spoof of the High School Musical.
So like a spoof of your actual TV show that you had in high school?
Yeah, well, the actual High School Musical, the movie. It was like the movie with Vanessa Hudgens and Zac Efron.
Yeah.
So I did like a digital spoof of that, and then MTV saw it. They ended up buying a pilot from me that was based on that web series, and I just kept going, like making more musical comedy and doing more comedy in that vein. But I hadn't really figured out how to marry that with my hosting career, so they sort of existed separately.
But that definitely took on a life for you, because if you go on your YouTube channel, you have a ton of comedy on there. I think actually your biggest video is the celebration of gay, what's it called?
Everyone's Just a Little Gay?
Yeah, everyone's just a little gay.
Oh, well, so I've removed so many videos.
Yeah.
I think I've removed over 200, but I did keep that one up there.
Oh, you removed a lot of comedy videos.
I removed a ton of them. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So I want to talk about that transition in a moment, but you did the comedy type videos at the highest level on YouTube for a long time.
Yeah.
And were able to make a living doing that then eventually?
Yeah.
Or was that more like fuel for your personal brand that led you to projects that paid?
After I had been working on TV for a few years and regularly booking work, I started to realize that I didn't really love it. I was just like, I don't really love the world of trying to be an actress. The auditioning, the constant, I don't know. It was just a very bizarre, it felt like such I'm trying to capture the words for it, but it didn't have the diarrhea of the mouth. It didn't have there was no consistency. There was no sense of agency. There was no sense of control. And a lot of times when I would like book that big job and everyone would be so excited, I'd get to set and I wouldn't be working with people that were nice, or the role would get cut down to something that wasn't even fun anymore. And I just was like, I can't imagine myself doing this for another 5 years, never mind 10, 15. So fortunately at the time, YouTubers were starting to make money. And the videos I was making on the side were starting to accumulate views, and my AdSense checks were getting bigger. Now, nothing close to what I could make a living off of, but I thought, well, what if I quit acting? What if I took all that energy that I'm putting into auditioning, driving around town, trying to impress people, and put it onto YouTube instead? And so I made the decision at 26 years old to stop everything I was doing in the traditional television and film space as an actress and put all that energy into YouTube.
So
that was a really hard decision.
Yeah, and I was looking at your stuff, and it's like high production stuff. Like, for example, was it an 80s cover album that you made with the Bon Jovi? And,
yeah.
And there's like studio audiences, and I mean, just this, like, like I have to pay money to get the cameras here filming us and get this thing edited and all that, and it's not cheap.
No.
And your stuff is way higher production than this podcast is.
I wouldn't say that. But you learn. I mean,
it looks great.
You
So
learn how to
yeah,
try to
what
make
did you?
You learn how to try and make things look as good as possible for as cheap as possible.
And were you just coming out
It
of
was
pocket?
like a startup, yeah.
Okay,
I looked at
yeah.
it as an investment. I actually, when I was 26, I had an experience where I was testing regularly for series, which basically means it was getting down to like me and 2 other girls as the series regular role in a big series. And it was
Like
happening
a big series like a
regularly.
Friends or a big series like a
Like
YouTube?
Silicon Valley on
Oh, okay.
HBO
Yeah.
or New Girl or I'm trying to think of the different series I tested for.
But you were getting on the cusp of like breaking through
I was
and
signing the
acting.
contracts. You get to the final stage where you go to the first you have your audition, then you go to producers, then they have you do read-throughs with the other actors, then you usually go to a studio test, then a network test. So there's all these different sort of testing rounds. And once you get to the final round, the network test or studio test, you sign the 7-year contract.
And that's the like big
They want you to
money.
sign it. Yep. And
You're a
then
reoccurring role on a big show.
you're a regular. So you are
regular.
signed, you are locked in for 7 years, 6 or 7 years into this contract, and they do it with it's usually 2 or 3 people that that they narrow it down to who sign these contracts, but you don't know if you'll get the role. So
But they
it's
sign you a
this-
7-year commitment?
Oh yeah.
And then what,
So
like
it's this
6 months later, they're
crazy
like,
game.
no, we take that back?
No,
Or
you audition
you're
like
still on there
you
for 7
basically
years.
negotiate the contract, you do the test, and then
Okay.
you know within a day or two whether the network's going to go with
And then
you. And
if
then
they
you're
don't
locked
go with
in.
you, they rip up the contract?
Yeah, then the contract's
Or are you
null.
a backup in case the other person?
Contract's null.
Got it.
So that's the testing
So you
process.
signed it.
So you go
signed
through
these.
this experience as an actor where once you start getting into a good rhythm and booking more, those tests happen more frequently.
And did they tell you when you signed the contract, hey, there's other people up for this? Or they're like,
Well, you
hey,
just know.
congrats. Okay.
You know, and sometimes
All right.
you know how many. Sometimes it's like 2, it's just you and 1 other person. Sometimes it's you and 4 other.
So
It
this
just
happened to you a
depends.
lot.
It was starting to happen to me frequently, and you basically start preparing yourself for this entirely new life. Because in many cases, you're signing contracts that will send you to Atlanta or to Vancouver or whatever for 7 years. And so I'm 26, and I'm looking at these contracts thinking, oh my gosh, if this happens, I'm going to be in Atlanta until I'm 33 or whatever, at minimum, like
Yeah.
off of this contract with,
Yeah.
I don't get a choice.
Yeah.
And there was this growing sense of unease from signing these contracts, knowing fully well that I didn't love what I was doing when I was working as a guest star. How am I going to feel if I'm actually lucky enough, quote unquote, to book a 7-year long committed, series regular job, which is the dream. And so I think the last one that I tested for was Silicon Valley.
Oh, wow.
That was my last test. It was for one of the main female roles on that show.
Okay.
And that's actually a great show.
Is that filmed in Atlanta?
No, that one was going to be, at the time, it was going to be San Francisco. I don't know if they ended up shooting there or not, but
Okay.
I did not get the role. And I realized that I just didn't like the idea of having zero control over what my life looked like for that extended period of time. So I saved up enough money. I budgeted, I think, 6 months worth of videos.
Wow.
I hired someone to be my videographer, editor, extraordinaire, and I started just making and banking videos. And so when I was ready to start my channel, I think I had, maybe 3 months worth.
So you had like a production company and you were
That was the beginning.
putting out, it was like a channel, it was a real channel.
It was.
That's
and
awesome.
then the idea was, as long as I could be self-sustaining with the channel, I always tried to keep my production costs at the same, basically have my production costs equivalent to what I was making through YouTube AdSense.
Then you knew it would.
So I would net out at $0. I would make nothing.
And then royalty.
And then the hope was that I would build a brand with
Yeah.
these subscribers, and that brand deals would come on top of that.
Gotcha.
And provide me an actual income. So I always saw the YouTube AdSense as just the way to afford the cost of production.
Gotcha.
And then brand deals or speaking gigs or other TV jobs that would come as a result of my channel would be like this income.
Yeah. And so were the music covers things that you knew would do well, that people liked, your audience liked those, and that was part of the channel?
I had no idea. I mean, originally it was musical comedy, and
Right.
those did well. I would sell the songs on iTunes, but they would usually do pretty well in terms of views. It was rare that a musical comedy song wouldn't get 1 million views, So I could always count on around $2,500 arriving in my account.
That's
through
about
AdSense.
what you get for 1 million views.
At the time. I have
Okay.
no idea now if it's worth that. I hear that AdSense
now it's
is like worth
$25
nothing.
now.
Yeah.
I don't know. But.
So then I would try to budget the videos to be around that amount or less. And then as time went on, I found them harder and harder to make because I was writing these songs from scratch. They were bigger productions. It was a lot of work.
More competition?
More competition.
For the eyeballs, you know.
And just, I mean,
both
they
in
were just
other
not
content creators and other networks and things like that too, right, are coming up at this point.
And YouTube had changed their algorithm, so now you needed to be putting out at least one video a week. At the time, you could get away with one video every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Now you needed at least one a week, ideally 2. And so I thought from just a production standpoint, I can't keep up with this. And not only that, but Instagram, Twitter, Facebook they had just come onto the scene as these social media platforms where you could aggregate your fans, and now you needed to push content out to those places. So you're becoming really divided in time and in energy.
Yeah, and you have different formats and
do?
different lengths and things like that work on one and not the other.
Yep. So covers became an easier way for me to still pursue something I enjoyed, music, but I wasn't having to write a song from scratch. It was an easier avenue.
I love hearing about the business that you built behind the scenes because people go on your channel at the time and would see a lot of comedy videos and they're like, oh, Taryn's doing this and that. But what they don't realize is you were a super crafty entrepreneur to get all that out there.
Thank you.
As far as putting the productions together and the schedule and learning how to work the algorithms and really you were kind of the star of your own network that you had built in a way. Is it fair to say?
Trying to figure out how to bootstrap a startup.
Because I'm going through that now with this
mentality.
podcast and putting my own content out there. Yeah. And I'm realizing that me getting in front of a camera and delivering content is just a small piece of it.
Yeah.
And I'm really seeing that from the way you built this system.
Yeah, and I tried to be more savvy at times. I think at a certain point in my late 20s, I just wanted to be self-sustaining, and I wanted to build a foundation that would allow me to pursue whatever it was I was curious about. And I realized that, unfortunately, the comedy angle, or at least the way that I'd gone about doing it on YouTube, had restricted me quite a lot. That I had built like a house, and it was really hard for me to do anything outside of the realm of that house without people becoming incredibly confused. And it was also a tough space to monetize.
Was it ever a position where the money was really flowing nicely for you?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of great years, and I was never a huge YouTuber because I got in, well, from the OG YouTuber perspective, I got in late in terms of trying to monetize, because it wasn't until 2013, 2014 that I started my channel.
Got it.
I was just putting up videos,
but as far as being like a YouTube content
and
creator,
doing regular content
as a living.
Yeah, I think that was 2013, 2014.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I got up to like 500,000 subscribers, but at that point, a lot of my friends were in the millions. And I knew what it would have taken to continue building, but I saw by 2015, 2016, I started seeing the writing on the wall for comedy. Because I had been looking at YouTube through the lens of Taryn the actress going onto YouTube and making content as this character. I had never looked at me as a vlogger or as a brand. And I had never really thought consciously about if I was a brand, if it was me on there, what is it that I want to say? I just hadn't, I was just still looking at it through the lens of I need to entertain people as an actress.
So interesting.
So I think at a certain point, I saw around 2015, 2016, YouTube had become a mecca for vloggers. And all of these vloggers had something to say. They were either educating people, right? Makeup, beauty, fitness. They had these like niches. And and it's like I had my own passions and hobbies, of course, but that wasn't what I had built an audience around.
Your audience was entertainment.
Nor were they interested in hearing what I had to say in those areas because they wanted comedy songs about poop.
Yes.
So I was like, oh darn, I really screwed myself. I built this audience doing this one thing that is hard to monetize because you're not selling anything. You're just entertaining people with comedy.
Yeah.
Do people want to buy t-shirts from you? Do they want to buy bikes from you?
Yeah.
Like, what do you know?
And then if you did pitch something, they'd be like, offended probably. Right?
So you're beholden to brand deals that want you to make comedy videos of some
like the Hot Pockets.
Like Hot Pockets. That is your only source of income.
You're just hoping for these brand deals.
And you're hoping for the brand deals, but you really can't build anything. It's very hard to see how you could turn that into a sustainable business, and then realizing that you are completely a slave to this YouTube algorithm. You're enslaved in a way, because any changes that they make could affect your bottom line overnight, and you don't have any other sources of revenue. Like I didn't have any products, or I had no other revenue sources. So it's either if their algorithm changes overnight and my numbers drop to a tenth of what they were, I'm not going to get those brand deals, which is the only way that I'm sustaining the business.
Was it a bummer when you had this realization, knowing that you'd spent these years building this thing?
Yeah.
And then you're like, shoot.
Yeah. And I would tell everyone, just like you are now, I would tell everyone, build your email list, build your email list, build your email list. And I never did it myself, even though I told everyone to do it. And in part because I didn't even know what my list was going to be about. I was this comedy YouTuber. Like, what is my...
Got it. What do they want to hear from email except here's my new comedy?
What am I going to talk about with them?
Yeah. So one day I'm scrolling through my Facebook or Instagram, I forget what, and up pops this picture of you. And you were like, it was like future Taryn. And there was like, I don't know if it was some photo effects or something like that, but you were wearing this like you look like this mega powerful like space warrior.
I remember that photo shoot.
And it was like, wait a second.
Yeah, where did this come from?
Who is this? And what did she do with Taryn Southern? And then
Did it
reading.
make you laugh? Were you like, this is ridiculous?
No,
Because of the comedy background?
No, actually, it was super fascinating for me. I think I might have even like wrote you a note at this point, or I made a mental note, because I saw that, and then below it, it talked about this new direction you were going down. And I was like, well, I'm actually getting goosebumps talking about this, because I saw this and I was like, whoa, this is what I have been thinking about doing myself. And I was in the mental transition of doing that myself also, was going from a guy who wrote comedy blogs and jokes on Facebook updates and Facebook notes when that was a thing, to trying to put out more serious content that would help people. And you went in that direction as well, going like, it was like, this was like you're coming out. You were like, boom, like this is me now. And it was really powerful the way you just like came out like bam with that photo. And that was, I believe, the announcement that you were working on the album produced with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So tell me about what was going on behind the scenes of you, like in your
total personal
mind
meltdown.
and emotions. Meltdown. Yeah, tell me about that.
I think a meltdown precipitated that.
Okay.
But basically, I had a meltdown. I realized I could not keep up with the hamster wheel of putting out multiple pieces of content every week and produce content for brands. That was really how I had become self-sustaining. I built a small production company. I now had several employees. And I just was exhausted. I was exhausted from the content churn. I was feeling really uncreative. I was not proud of what I was making because I was trying to cut back on production costs and on the bottom line, but having to produce more. And simultaneously, like wanting to grow my business, wanting to make something that was bigger than just my channel if my channel died. And I think I had a lot going on personally at that time too. So trying to maintain this version of myself, this like comedic, lighthearted version of myself online while I was going through a very challenging personal transition and just really wanted to go deep with people was also hard. So I had a breakdown.
It sounds like you evolved as a person as well.
Yeah.
Because when you
so.
started the comedy route, you were what, 23?
23 when I started doing the comedy videos.
And
so now
by
I'm
this point,
29,
you built a business, you have a team that's dependent on you for income, which is a lot of responsibility. You learn management skills.
Yes.
I'm sure by that point affected the lives of many, many people around the world that were probably writing you with problems and things like that, and speaking on a lot of stages and meeting a lot of high caliber people. So I'm sure you had huge evolution as a person as well.
Yeah, more responsibility, all of it. It was, and I wasn't sure where it would all end up, like where the future of YouTube was going, but I saw my monthly revenues were getting cut just because of the changes that YouTube was making to the algorithm and to the ad program. And I was like, if I don't stop or figure out something else, I'm going to burn myself into the ground.
Did you have any stalkers along the way?
I had a few. I think every
feel like you would have
YouTuber,
had, like, a
it's a rite of
shitload.
passage as a YouTuber to have stalkers, but it depends on how you define stalkers. Because there are like the friendly stalkers
Right.
that maintain a distance, like the ones that just build websites for you in honor of your feet. Would that count?
Ooh, that definitely counts.
I had a few feet websites.
Oh, you've had multiple?
Yeah.
On GeoCities or actual?
They would build
TarynSouthern'sFeet.com.
like wiki feet, and then there was another Taryn Southern's feet, something like that.com,
Whoa.
and they would take screen grabs from all my videos, and I learned that I really should stop making videos barefoot.
No way.
I never did it on purpose. I just did it
That's
because I don't wear
wild.
shoes in my home, but
Screen grabs.
lots of screen.
Okay. What else? What
Lots
else?
of
Tell me.
screenshots. I did have somebody show up at my apartment one time. That was scary. After that, I learned how to try and mask my address. I had lots of things sent in the mail. Some things that were inappropriate. But you also have this different
Like what? Wait,
relationships.
I gotta guess.
I mean, like sex toys.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Photos of.
I had a PO box, so it was kind of like anything could come to this PO box. And
Yeah. Did you get a lot of like strange DMs?
I did.
Like
lots of
yeah.
bizarre DMs.
Feet-
but I also
feet
had a
sent
lot of
back to
really
you?
sweet things that were sent to me, and you just realize that it all came with the territory, but you've developed a relationship with these other humans that are sitting on that side of the computer screen. You interact with them through social media and through comments, and you actually get to know who they are. And because I was also doing some live streams and some of the Patreon, I was doing Patreon early on, so I had a relationship with some of my viewers. And I also realized that was energetically challenging to maintain along with everything else I was doing. It was like I had 5 jobs basically, and most of those jobs didn't pay. So you end up trying to figure out you're making really money from only one funnel, but your energy is going into like 7 areas in order to fuel that one funnel. And it was no longer a good use of time and energy and effort. So I had to recalibrate.
Wow. How long?
So I quit.
You
Just like
quit?
everything else. I just quit. Like all 1 month back in 2016, I uploaded a video and I said, I don't think I'm gonna upload a video for a while.
Oh,
and
shit.
a while turned into a year.
Wow.
And everyone was like, where'd she go?
And were you in the like down in the dumps during that year? Or
No,
were
I
you
had been
feeling
down in the dumps
invigorated?
leading up. And
Okay, got
then
it.
I was like, I think the thing that's going to get me out of this slump is to stop running on the wheel. I'm a hamster on a wheel, and I'm never gonna be able to see outside of myself unless I stop. And so I did. I stopped and I gave myself some space. I had a few contracts that I needed to finish up on the production side of things, so it wasn't like I was without things to do. So I was still working on those contracts, on those projects. And I think in my spare time, I started going to VR and AR meetups because I wanted to learn more about this new content space that people were excited about, and I found it exciting and interesting. And about a year of kind of experimenting, learning, playing around, I decided to focus on projects that were at the intersection of emerging technology and storytelling, and basically figuring out how to build stories or campaigns around around things that were in that space because I found them endlessly interesting. I felt like it was an umbrella that I could really pursue for a long period of time.
So you started talking about that on camera or hosting?
Really just talking about it with my friends first. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I'm going to have to rebuild my entire universe that I've created online. So I started by removing a ton of videos on YouTube.
Okay.
It's like 250 videos, something like that.
Comedy type stuff?
Yeah, like a lot of the more risque comedy. I couldn't remove all of them. Like I said, it's pretty hard to delete stuff from the internet because there were so many things that were re-uploaded by fans. And I mean, I could go back through and I keep saying I'm going to spend like a week coming whenever I have that time. I don't know to really go through and clean it out. And it's not even because I'm ashamed of everything that I did or embarrassed by it. It's just that some of it's confusing for people. If you're trying to build a brand in one specific area and then people go online and they see a song called Everyone Pees in the Ocean while you're like over here talking about artificial intelligence and creativity.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
That is very confusing.
Very confusing.
I get
Like,
it.
what is this girl? What is she
Right.
trying to do? What is she trying to say? And unfortunately, like that version of me, it kind of undermines a lot of what I'm trying to do now. And I dislike that that's the case. I wish that there was more space to evolve as an artist and for it to
Totally.
just be okay.
But
But
hello, internet.
it is what
Everything
it is.
Captured.
And so
Can
now
people
I have
find
to
your
be
old
very
Beanie Baby stuff if they look hard enough?
No, I
Okay.
can't even find it.
Yeah.
I wish. But I need to be more proactive. And this is something that's like been an ongoing lesson for me,
Yeah.
good and bad, that the various versions of myself that have that I presented online have consequences, like long-term consequences and ramifications, and like also still present opportunities. But the reality is you have to be so on top of what it is that you've put out there as you evolve.
Yeah.
It's like, that's another job, right?
That's so true. Yeah. So you're talking about this with your friends. What was the moment when you decided you wanted to create an album written by artificial intelligence?
Like in this year time period where I took off from YouTube, I was diving into a ton of new areas that previously I just didn't have the time to. So learning about virtual reality, learning about augmented reality, also looking at biotech and genomics and brain-computer interfaces and all this stuff that was happening in the emerging tech space, and how I could tell stories around that, because I found it all fascinating. And I didn't know exactly how to do that, but I read an article in the New York Times one day about a couple of artificial intelligence programs that could compose music. And because music had always been my sweet spot on YouTube, it was just like, bam. It was so immediate in my mind. I was like, I'm making an album with AI. I have to make an album with AI. I don't know how to do it.
No one had done it, right?
No one had done it that I knew of. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know if I will figure it out on my own, how I'm going to make this happen, but I have to do it. And I reached out to all these AI companies, these software companies. I said, can I get my hands on your software? Will you teach me how to use it?
And they were like, are you going to make a pee in the ocean?
I know,
with
they're
our
probably
software, right?
terrified, right? But I wanted it to be a serious album that explored humans' relationship with technology. And it felt so creatively exciting to me to be taking music, which is one of my passions, and then sort of merging it with this big unknown space where there was no true path in how to make music with AI. There were like a bunch of different paths, and I had to figure it out as I went along. And I didn't even know, would this project make me money? Would it? I wasn't thinking any further than this is the most exciting thing I can imagine doing right now with my time. And so that's why I did it.
And how did you find the people or the robot or like?
I reached out to all these AI software companies,
Okay.
and they, for the most part, they
Someone
all
had
got
one
back
that-
to me and said,
Okay.
they were engineers, and they said, great, we'll teach you how to use our software, we'll teach you how to code. Some of them required coding, some did not, and there was an education process for a couple of months, learning how to write and compose music with the software. And
Had
then,
you written much music before besides song lyrics? Like, do you play instruments?
Piano, basic piano,
Oh, okay.
but not great,
Okay.
not fantastic.
But enough to write
Yes.
for songs. Okay.
Enough to write for songs.
Okay.
And then I applied for a grant from Google. They had like an artist VR grant, and the grant proposal was I wanted to make a series of immersive music videos for this album. So it'd basically be taking principles of virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence and merging them together into this experience. And because it was a very experimental program under YouTube/Google, they gave me the grant money, and that was probably some of the videos that you saw online were a result of the grant money that I received from Google/YouTube.
Wow. And those videos blew up.
Did they? I haven't even looked.
Yeah,
I don't know.
mean, there's millions of views
Are
on,
there?
on
Okay, good.
songs that you wrote
know.
alongside a robot. So what was it like when you first put that photo out? Was that the first online,
Yes.
or is that just happened to be the first thing I
Yeah,
saw?
no,
Was that the
I
first
think
thing?
so.
Like, here is me now, boom?
Yes, I did a photo shoot,
Okay.
and it was just an experimental photo shoot.
Who shot those photos? Because those photos are fucking
A
awesome.
friend of mine, Devin Mitchell.
Devin
shot
Mitchell.
them.
Okay. Go look at the photos. online. They're
Devinography on
sick.
Instagram. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, he was the first one to shoot those photos. He was an old
Okay.
friend of mine, and
And
I
you put
just
it out there.
and it was so scary. It was like,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. There's
Yeah.
no turning back.
And it's
once
all
I
your
do this
fans are still following you, expecting the next.
comedy video.
Yeah.
But sort of like, where did Taryn go? Is she
Okay.
dead? And then all of a sudden, here I am with a weird silver stuff all over my face, saying like, I'm making an AI album and doing all this VR stuff. And hi, this is the new me.
How did they respond?
People were really supportive, which was great. Supportive, and yet also I think there was a fair number of people who were like,
Will you
"Where's
show
the
your
comedy?"
feet still?
Yeah, or
We wanna
where's
see
your
the
where are your
Yeah,
feet?
Yeah.
What about the poop jokes?
Yeah.
And those people just sort of quietly leave.
Okay.
And
On to the next feat.
And the reality sinks in that the house that you built is now like there's a bit of a foundation left over, but the roof and the side wall, everything's gone
Wow.
from the
So
house.
The album is amazing. The songs are really
you.
catchy.
Thank you.
And the lyrics are really fascinating too. Did you write the lyrics yourself?
I did. I wrote the lyrics myself.
Okay, but the beats and the melodies.
All of the orchestration, all the composition was AI.
And does
I
the
like the
AI
way-
tell you, like for example, you give it the lyrics, and the AI will tell you what notes should be high and low in the chorus?
No, I would write the lyrics once I had a finished song that I was pleased with,
Oh,
based
okay, got
upon
it.
how I felt about the music itself. But usually, I mean, it depended on the AI software that I was working with. But I was
You used multiple?
I used like 4 or 5. Yeah,
Oh,
Ava,
shit.
Amper, Google Magenta, IBM Watson Beat, and I feel like there was a 5th one that I used.
So people can go grab these
Insect.
and make their own albums.
Yeah,
Or songs.
they can make their own songs. Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. And now there are more
Now
AI
it's probably
things
more,
on the
'cause
scene
this
as
was when
well.
2017 when you made
Yes.
this. Okay.
Yes. And
Which is like-
2017 when I started. I think 2018 is when I released the album.
With the
Yes.
pace of technology too, that was probably like
I know,
20
feels
years
like-
ago in AI
I know,
years,
isn't
right?
it wild?
Yeah.
Everything moves so quickly. But I released that, and then
And that brought you, at least from an outsider's perspective, a whole new type of recognition and spotlight. Because I saw you on stage at big conferences, like were you at Web Summit
Yeah.
and New York Times,
yep,
I believe.
New York Times AI Summit,
Yeah.
Web Summit. I did a bunch of conference circuits where I was able to perform or speak about the role of AI in human creativity, which was exciting for me. It was a totally new space for me to be venturing into. I really was uncertain whether or not I ignore my past decade of work or if I try to somehow include that in my narrative. And I didn't know, right? When we think about our own stories and how we
yeah.
tell our story,
Yeah.
I'd made such a big jump. I was so afraid of acknowledging a lot of my history, thinking that it would take away from what I was trying to do in this more serious tech space. And since then, I think, I don't know if I have the answer, but I think that's a big challenging thing for anyone that's trying to reinvent themselves. I'm curious if you did the same when you went through your evolution of self, like how you decide to unravel your own history.
Yeah.
What do you pack up and like hide in the
Yes,
back,
yes.
and what sort of gets reframed and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I believe I have the answer,
Okay.
though it is very tricky.
Okay. Great. I'm
So
excited to hear this.
I have this saying that your shit is your superpower. That thing that you're really embarrassed about is probably the thing that gave you the strength and wisdom to become what you are now. And that doesn't mean you're probably not still embarrassed about it. But by sharing it, also you are creating an opportunity to connect with more people, because when you share your shit, everyone realizes that you are human just like them. They have their own shit. So then humans bond by sharing shit.
Right.
So I think people like the lonely girl on YouTube that are reading the script and getting a lot of fans, I bet the script was really vulnerable moments of like, hey, you know, my boyfriend dumped me or whatever it was.
Talking about her family. Her
Yeah, it's
boyfriend,
probably a bunch of stuff that's like very personal. And if you look at these fake Instagram influencers that are made from CGI, some of them are really well done. The captions, they're like, oh man, I'm feeling stressed out today. You know, I feel like even some of my personal friends want me to fail.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to be strong and, you know, stick with the people. Like, and it's like a fake person that's like made on a computer. But it's really engaging.
Right.
And that's how they get the millions of followers, is by revealing these vulnerabilities and sharing them. Now, at the same time, there's some things that are so freaking embarrassing that it's hard to talk about. So for me, when I was, well, all through my teens, I was very unsuccessful with women. And when I was 19, I discovered that there was this like underground world of these guys called pickup artists that would teach guys how to approach women. And I actually won, you know, they have the High School Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So I won most bashful.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it was in junior high school. So I was like the shyest guy in the whole fucking school.
Wow.
I was so hopeless. I was a virgin. All of my friends had girlfriends. I'd never like even had a girlfriend. I'd only kissed 2 girls. One of them was right after she'd finished throwing up because she was so drunk.
Wow.
And then she came and kissed me on her way out. This was a girl, I was 16, she was 20. That was one of my 2 kisses when I was like at the age of 18 or something. And so I was very desperate, very lonely, very confused.
Yeah.
And so I started reading these books
Yeah.
and meeting these guys like Mystery, who you might have
Yep.
heard of, who had the show on
Yep.
VH1,
Yep.
and Neil Strauss,
Yes.
who was an underground researcher in that scene, but also
Wow.
desperate and lonely himself. And so he was in there writing a book
Right.
and hang out with those guys.
Yeah.
I ended up in his book, The Game.
No way.
And the character that I am in that book is a composite character of a few different people, including some people who were much more nerdy and creepy than I was back then.
Wow.
So guys who were like trying to hypnotize women over dinner and things like
Wow.
that. And when Neil asked me to be in the book, he asked me about this specific thing I had done, which was go on the TV show Eliminate. Do you remember that show?
I do remember Eliminate.
Yeah, so I went on the show. It was 4 guys competing for a date with 1 girl. I ended up winning mostly because I just didn't say much and let the other guys talk themselves out of the date.
Nice.
And there was this whole like community of these like pickup artist guys.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
And I worked in the business too for a guy named Eben Pagan, who you know, that wrote a book called Double Your Dating. And I worked at his company. And so I was like a known person in this space. And when I went on that Eliminate show, all of the nerds got around their TV sets and watched it. That was the thing Neil asked me. He's like, hey, I'm making a composite character. Can I use your Eliminate episode? And I won't mention your name. I'll use a different name. I said, sure, let me just see it when you're done. So he sends it to me, and I read it, and it's a fine summary of the show. And I'm like, hey, can you change this thing about the girl? Because I don't want people to identify the specific episode. He changed that, but I didn't see the rest of the book with what that character was doing, all the weird shit. And so then the book comes out. And what's more memorable than someone going on a reality TV show? Not much, you know, in the scheme of this book. So everyone attributed that entire character to me for years. And so the character's name in the book is Grimble. And if you go search for Craig Elimidate on the internet, it comes up as Grimble on Elimidate. And if you read the book, this Grimble guy is such a loser. It's
Really?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I was also a loser. And I did some, things that were very probably repelling to women that
That you don't identify with anymore.
take years to learn to correct,
Yeah.
you know, like I know I wrote some creepy notes and things like that, you know, and having that floating around has been,
was
this is the first time I've told the whole thing.
Really?
Actually
Wow.
on a recorded conversation.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I didn't know this whole story. I knew there was some association with some of those guys, but I never read the book either. I've read Neil's follow-up, but I never actually read the game.
Yeah. So long term, though, a lot of things happen. I mean, Neil is more successful than ever. He just wrote Kevin Hart's book,
Yep.
and he's got I think the #1 podcast in the United States
he
or
really?
something right now with that
Wow.
murder mystery thing he
Oh, good for
created.
him.
And he's crushing it, and it's part of his journey was doing that pickup artist thing, and then doing the next book that was like, hey, I was wrong in that book, you know. And Eben Pagan,
truth.
of course, is making a ton of impact, and now teaching love and relationships with his wife, who's
Yes.
a brilliant love coach. Annie, I
Annie's
know
amazing.
we've both done some coaching with her.
I was just in Miami this last weekend with her.
Oh, amazing!
Yes.
Yeah, she's unbelievable. Annie Lala, if you need love coaching, she's the fucking best.
The best.
Mark Manson, who had
Oh, that's
and still does one of the biggest selling books of this decade,
Yeah, The
was
Subtle Art of Not
a
Dignified.
pickup artist instructor.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people who
You guys
came
have
from
all.
that.
How have you all gotten together and said, "Wow, look at how far we've come and how we've evolved, and now what we're putting out in the world."
I mean, we do talk about it when we see each other one-on-one. There hasn't
Yeah.
been like a re-meetup.
I think there needs to be a
Some of the people
meetup.
are still doing that
Right.
stuff, and in those bubbles, you know, I still see some of those people once in a while too. I'll run into them at an event or something. Like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm just led a workshop at this nightclub. You know, it's like, whoa, so long ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a part of the thing that I went through that I am embarrassed about. And when I talk about it, usually I think about what is the bonding moments. And I wanted to share with you because you can relate to having the content that you are a part of being out there and being like apprehensive about people seeing it. So like me with like my story in the book, I don't want people like seeing that because first of all, it's not even me, but even the parts that were me of the show and stuff is just still not me now.
Right.
But when I do share with other people now, I am open about the point that I was a virgin until I was like 21 or 22. And that's very bonding to
Yeah,
people because they're
yeah.
like, wow, okay, I thought I was a loser. This guy's the worst. Or they're like, oh, I was a virgin until I was 26, so I can relate, you know,
Right.
or I was also lonely.
Right.
You know, it shows people that you know how they feel
Yeah.
when you share these points that were really tough for you.
Points
And
of
also that is, I think, what helped carve me into the type of man who was able to finally attract an amazing wife because I had so many years of failure and being a loser and being unappealing to women.
Yeah. I get all of that. I feel the same way. I mean, failure is character building, for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to like fully fail. You can just have
Yeah.
a series of missteps. But I admire anyone who tries to mix it up, who tries to evolve,
Yeah, it's really
who
tough.
tries to reinvent. It's much harder than keeping with the course, but
And
Okay.
it's weird having the people that are used to your content, that are your friends, having them see the new you. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you know, you'll have
Although
your
it's
friends that-
interesting, I do feel like when I was making comedy videos, a lot of my friends would say, "You're not like how you are on YouTube. You're not what I expected.
Oh,
You're much
interesting.
more serious and
Okay.
much more.
Yeah.
You seem brighter than how you appear on YouTube."
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I would get different comments like that.
Yeah, so it's something I think the insight, if I could share with people, is that share your shit. Share the stuff you're embarrassed about. And
Share your inner world.
It'll connect you with your audience, and they will probably, despite what you think, want to hear more about what you're up to now because they know that you have a wider range.
Yeah.
And no one has a wider range than Taryn Southern. So, yeah. So, what the hell were we talking about?
We just went on a long.
Oh, yeah. So we were talking about when
tangent.
you would talk at those. So now when you put that out, you were getting a whole different type of spotlight.
Yeah.
The album was featured all over the place.
Yep.
And
I had
was it a one and done, or do you see yourself making more albums?
I didn't know. I mean, at that time, I just wanted to experiment with this new technology, and it did turn into some opportunities in speaking and also in consulting for companies in the emerging tech space around how to build content campaigns or partnerships with artists to demonstrate what their technology can do. Like case in point, all of these AI companies were trying to figure out how do we tell the story of AI without it freaking people out.
Right,
And
they
humans
just think that
thinking
the
that
world's
robots
gonna
are just
end.
going to take over.
Yeah, which they
And
are.
it's
but
like,
we don't
well,
need to- yeah.
if you start partnering with artists and figuring out ways to create things like this album, then that's one route to go. So kind of figuring out how to parlay it into these interesting new partnerships and so that I could create more in the emerging tech space. That's one area that it divulged into. And then simultaneously, while working on the album, I was also working on this documentary. I'm putting these pieces together for a documentary on brain-computer interfaces, and then that also took off around the same time. And
So I saw the release date so far apart, but I forget that making
Yeah.
a documentary takes a freaking long time.
And in fact, it ended up being the case that I ended up having to work full-time on the documentary about halfway through finishing the album. So then the rest of the album production would happen on nights and weekends as like a hobby.
Oh, wow.
While I was actually in full-time production on this documentary. Because just
tell
like
me
so
how
many
this-
things in the entertainment industry, they sort of, you develop something, you don't know when it's actually going to move forward. And
Yeah, but you were probably used to that.
Then, yeah.
So tell me how this idea for the documentary came about.
It was an amalgamation of a couple of different things happening simultaneously.
What's amalgamation mean?
Amalgamation, a synthesis, I think.
Okay.
Hopefully I got that right.
Yeah.
The culmination of a few different things happening simultaneously. I had met a few different people that were working in the neurotech space and doing really interesting things. Simultaneously, Black Mirror, Westworld had become these massive hits. And what I found fascinating was that we had all this sci-fi television and sci-fi genre filmmaking hitting a sort of peak in pop culture. We were exploring through these series and ideas what happens when humans merge with AI or humans and machines merge. And meanwhile, this is really happening in the real world, but those stories or that story isn't really being told. We're getting the fictional version. And so I thought, wow, what's happening in the real world is actually just as interesting, if not more so, than what's happening in the fictionalized version of these stories. So I started fleshing out an idea for a documentary that would follow some of these individuals who are being implanted with chips or brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah.
Whatever chosen word.
Talk about one of them that.
So in this documentary that I produced and co-directed called I Am Human, we ended up following 3 humans with implantable brain-computer interfaces. So one of the humans is a woman with Parkinson's, former artist who lost her ability to make art because of the degradation of her disease. Also a paraplegic who was involved in a bicycle accident and could no longer move from the neck down. And a blind retiree, former IT government worker who, due to a regenerative retinal disease, could no longer see.
Lost his vision. Okay.
And all 3 of them had signed up with some degree of hesitation to have an interface implanted in their brain to try and ameliorate these issues that had, for lack of a better term, had sort of rendered a part of their humanity inaccessible to them.
So these interfaces are like little computers,
Tiny
different
little
style
chips.
computers.
Yeah, think like a computer chip.
Chips in the brain.
That's right.
Chips in the brain that
Stimulate.
redirect brain waves or electrical stimulation or all the above.
Electrical stimulation is really the primary game right now in brain-computer interface land. That's changing, and there are other technologies that you can introduce, like ultrasound or light or sound wave. You know, there's different technology that you can use to interface with neurons, but most of the people that currently are undergoing these implants, it's electrical stimulation. They're hooked up to a device. The implant is hooked up to a device that then can stimulate the neurons in a pattern that mimics neuronal activity and can do all sorts of things within the brain, controlling movement, controlling thought, controlling sensory experience. And so we wanted to explore this whole world through the lens of these three humans, their journeys, and then what this means for all of us. You know, yes, we're looking at these specific three humans, but they are representative of a much larger societal movement now toward brain interfaces.
And in the
what are
future,
the
it could be
questions that we need to be asking
amplification,
ourselves? Right? That's right. And because with the people that are being implanted now, even though they're doing it to try and fix or solve for a disease that's taken something from them, they're also presented with opportunities that they might not have had without the brain interface. So Stephen, for instance, our character who's blind and has the implant to restore his sight, you know, he's got this capability in the chip that would potentially allow him to see in the dark, infrared vision, right? Because now that you're using silicone and not biology, there are a lot of opportunities that present themselves.
Or what if it was 360 vision?
Yeah.
That plugs into your brain like this. Like,
There
would
you
your
go.
brain be able to read the 360 scope all the time? Maybe.
Right.
You'd have less people getting hit by buses.
There you go. So there's there are a million questions that come up as a result of watching these stories, and ethical questions and larger societal questions, and we only hit the tip of the iceberg. I'd like to think that there's a part 2 or at least a TV series that could come out of this that really dives into where we're at and is keeping up with the pace of the technology and the changes. But it was a huge undertaking for me, massive endeavor that required a lot of research, working with these very serious institutions, but was such an intellectually satisfying artistic endeavor. Like, finally, I felt like I got to do something that was really hard from both a point of view of storytelling and of learning basically neuroscience from scratch.
Yeah, I think so the documentary is fascinating. It's called I Am Human. And I also want to say that this is a fucking documentary. Like, you're a director now. This is Tribeca Film Festival, all the film festivals, and, you know, amazing reviews, well-deserved.
Thank you.
I would watch it again because it's such a, like, it makes you think so much. And there's fascinating things that you don't think about. Like, the one with Parkinson's, when they have to put the chip in, she has to stay awake. They are unable to put her under because there's risk of death if her brainwaves aren't going.
That's
it's
right.
like crazy stuff like that. Are they all like that? Every chip?
I think most of the deep brain stimulation implants are done. I think they're all done while the patient is awake. Yeah.
Wow. So I mean, this documentary is wild. Everyone should see this documentary to see what's coming
out
next.
in 2020.
Especially if you like the books like *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus* that talk about.
Homo Deus was actually the inspiration.
Was it?
It was like the ideas presented in that book blew my mind. It changed my entire worldview, and it's like, how do we somehow present even just a few of these ideas without it just being a documentary with people talking, you know, about the future?
So if you could have an implant to give yourself a superhuman ability, what would it be?
Ooh, I mean, I would love to be able to shut off my fight or flight system. I think I'm ruled too much by this ancient system that doesn't serve me well in real life, that says, Taryn, alert, alert, time to panic. Something's wrong is happening, and my body senses it as though it's actually in danger.
And that's something that could be realistic within the next 5 to 10 years, I feel like.
I think so.
In Homo Deus, Deus, they talk about the helmet.
Yes.
Where the woman is in I think she has a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And they test her in like a video game, but it's like a simulated war environment.
Oh, yeah.
Where they would put the helmet on.
Yep.
And then she's able, with the helmet that helps her brainwaves, able to laser focus and like really do well in the game. And as soon as the helmet's off, it's just too chaotic for her.
Yeah.
So it is really doing some of the things
I
you're
think
talking
we could
about.
get there. We're figuring out how to turn on and off these various systems of the brain. And some people might argue, I mean, I've learned a lot about what people will argue over the last few years, but they don't want to mess with what we've been given. But as a society, we've already signed off on a lot of quote unquote cognitive enhancements or cognitive changers. Like we're all sort of okay on some greater or lesser degree with pharmaceuticals, which is like carpet bombing the brain. Right,
true.
to induce change. This is sort of the same thing, just going about it differently.
Yeah.
And you could say it's far more precise. But I think, yeah, for me, I want to turn off the things that I feel like were evolutionary adaptations that don't really serve us well in modern times. Like I'd love to just be a bit more even-keeled, less emotionally reactive, and not go into a state of adrenaline or panic around things that aren't actually physically endangering.
Right. And, childhood baggage that we carry
Trauma.
around that affects us in relationships.
Trauma.
And even,
I think we can be so much happier and so much more, and I don't love the word, I don't even like happiness as a goal, but I think the world can be so much more joyful and playful, and we have the ability to be so much more present if we can just kind of turn off some of those annoying little ancient adaptations.
Yeah, I remember walking out of that movie thinking, wow, we are the last generation that is not going to have this.
Cool.
My kids are going to have some sort of
Interface.
cyborg interface.
You felt that.
or
You
chip.
you walked out thinking this is inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
because that's what we humans do, right? We're always trying to optimize and improve, often to a fault. But this is...
I'm glad that that's what you took away from it. I think that's what it's surprising to most people to think that could even be a possibility, but when you dive into what's really going on, it's hard to come out with any other conclusion other than this is happening.
It's like an inevitability.
It already is happening,
Yeah.
so how do you stop it?
Wow, so you were in the middle of making this documentary
Yeah.
about brain
The future of
computer
our brains.
interfaces in human health, and you had a shocking health discovery.
Yes. It was we premiered the documentary at Tribeca Film Festival in May 2nd of this year, 2019. And the day after the film premiered at Tribeca, I discovered I had a lump in my underarm, and it was a very large lump under my arm. And I thought, how have I not seen this? It's so big.
Where,
Like up in my armpit, but like
So
the base of my armpit.
okay, so not that near your breast,
No.
really.
No, it was in my underarm.
And it was so big, you're like,
And I
whoa.
only noticed it when I had my arm up. So it's like the way that my muscle caused it to pop out, to protrude
Yeah.
out. But it was large.
Was it hard?
It was hard and large. It was like the size of a ping pong ball.
And how like did it feel like a cyst or something?
No,
to
it was
know.
like, it felt like I mean, I'm feeling my kneecaps right now. It felt like a hard mass that it wasn't squishy.
Whoa. Okay.
You know, it was a hard mass, and it didn't have any pain associated with it. And I
Okay.
Googled that, and that was not a good sign. Because if there's pain associated with it, a lot of times it's just a fluid-filled cyst.
Okay.
So I was pretty concerned. I actually had a friend in New York who was a doctor, feel it. And he said, you need to immediately go get this checked back in LA. So I made an appointment, got back to LA the next week, and was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer that had spread to my lymph nodes. And it was a 2 centimeter tumor, 2 by 1.4 centimeter tumor. Wow. Yeah. And I had another
Stage
tumor,
3.
another tumor in another lymph node.
What does
Yeah,
the stage
they
3
technically
mean?
categorized it as stage 2C or stage 3A. The way they stage cancers, it's different depending on the cancer.
Isn't it like
and
stage 4? Like
Stage 4 is you can't cure currently. Stage 4 is metastatic breast cancer. That means it's spread to other organs outside of the lymph nodes in breast. Lymph nodes can be either stage 2 or stage 3, and they stage it based on the size of the tumor and how many there are.
Okay.
And they don't really know how many there are until they go in and do surgery. But in my case, and this is becoming the case more frequently with breast cancers, they wanted to do chemo before surgery with the attempt to shrink the tumor so they don't have to remove a ton of lymph nodes. Because let's say it had already been in 16 lymph nodes.
Okay.
They don't know until they get in there in surgery and inject a dye to see where the cancer went. And they don't want to rip everything out if the chemo has an opportunity to kill it. And then, because you don't want like lifelong problems without your lymph nodes if you can help it.
Yeah.
So basically, for a lot of new breast cancers, they actually don't really give you a definitive stage until after surgery. So I've now been downstaged because once I got into surgery, they discovered I had a complete response to chemo. So
What does that mean?
That basically means that the chemo killed all the cancer cells in my
All of
lymph
them?
nodes. From what they can see.
Wow.
You're never going to see like the tiny, tiny microscopic cells in tumors that
Yeah.
you're not taking out. But in the original tumors, I was really scared because after about chemo number 3, my tumor stopped shrinking. It wasn't responding, and I thought that meant, like with so many cancers, you have different types of cells within a tumor, and some will respond, and
Yeah.
some won't, and some will become stronger and develop almost like an antibiotic type resistance to the chemo, where they outsmart the chemo, and I was very concerned that might be the case with mine. But the good news is it was just a pile of dead cells, and the other little tumor was completely gone. So
What's going through your head when you first go into the doctor's office and they tell you, like, this is actually cancer? That must, because you're so young.
it was just a shock. It was like you just never think that that's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Everyone has experience with cancer. I think everyone knows someone or has a
yeah.
family member. It's definitely, I think we all have some experience with it to some degree, but we just think it never me, especially because I felt healthy. I mean, I definitely had a rough year where I was working way too hard on that documentary, trying to get that thing done, not sleeping, not taking care of myself. Definitely sort of, my health was like probably priority number 7, on the list, but I didn't think I would ever have anything like that pop up. And the fact that it was already in my lymph nodes was even more terrifying. It wasn't like it was just in the breast. So it felt like it was already at a stage that was more than uncomfortable for me. I was like, I would feel a lot better with a stage 1 situation.
And do you sit with it, or do you tell your family or friends first, or?
Here's the funny story is I immediately called my, one of my best friends, Julia and Anna, who's here. We all went to college together and we're besties, and I called them, and the first thing they did is they came over to my apartment. I was laughing and crying at the same time. I was just like, how is this even possible? And then Anna ordered a bunch of liquor to my house, which is like, let's have a drink. That's how we deal with trauma. I was like, I don't know if this is the best idea for a newly diagnosed cancer patient, but sure, why not? Let's have one last drink, and we did. That was literally like the last drink I had in months. But it was, there's no words. I mean, it was shocking. You're terrified to ask the questions that everyone thinks about, but you are too scared.
Die,
what
right?
what are my chances?
Yeah, what are your chances?
And it wasn't even, the weird thing for me is I had a sense, like I knew that there's always that worst case scenario. My aunt sadly passed away from the exact same type of breast cancer that I had. She died, I think it'd be 15 years ago, and it was before they had these antibody treatments that I'm now on, along with the chemo. And so my type of breast cancer 15 plus years ago would have been pretty much a death sentence. You just couldn't survive
your
it.
Family passing from it.
And watching her fight it for 5 years was awful. So I think it was 5 or 6 years that she fought it. But yeah, there's always that part of you that thinks, oh my gosh, that could be me. But I also knew that the treatments had gotten much better, that the chances were good. I was actually far more terrified that that this would now become my life, that from now on, all I'll be thinking about is, will it come back? Because you can fight it, but reoccurrence rates are very high, especially when you get it young. High relative to other cancers. And so I was so scared about my life becoming cancer. Like that's what scared me the most. And the not knowing. There's just so many question marks. Like, how long am I going to be on chemo? How long am I going to be fighting this for? Will I really get all of it? So I had the best possible news last month after surgery when they went in, and they didn't know for another week because they have to send everything to pathology, the tumor and everything. But I had been declared a complete response to chemo, which does not mean that you're cancer free from a medical standpoint. What it means is the cancer responded fully to the chemotherapy from what they can see. And now you have to go through these other treatments to sort of ensure that anywhere else in your body where there could be little cancer cells floating around, that those are taken care of. So I start radiation next week. I'll be doing daily radiation for 6 weeks.
What does that mean?
It's basically like a big, huge radiation machine.
You go in it and,
And they put in some like little tattoos on my chest area and lymph node area, the radioactive tattoos.
Like actual tattoos?
Yeah, tiny. So the laser can find the right place.
Oh, wow.
And the idea is that it kills off, the radiation can kill off these cancer cells that could still be floating around in the area. And then I also continue on antibody infusions. So I have a port implanted into my chest. That'll stay there till next June. And through that port, I have infusions every 3 weeks of this antibody, which specifically targets HER2 positive breast cancer cells, which is the kind that were so deadly 15 years ago. So
do these treatments like put you down for a couple days, or because I heard
way better than chemo.
chemo's pretty devastating. Right?
No, I mean, like, I feel pretty normal now. I don't have the same energy levels.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be very careful with my energy. Like, I can feel when I get tired and worn down, it's faster than typical. Also, my brain is still coming back online, so I've been having a tough time finding words or articulating thoughts. But it's so much better than what it was 2 months ago. I'm so grateful that I had that response to chemo, because had I not had that response, I would have had to continue on a new chemo drug for another year, which would have been a lot.
Wow.
And it would have been a big, it would have just taken a lot of emotional and mental fortitude, I think, to continue fighting, while you feel as terrible as you do.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this tattoo new, or is that something you've had before?
No, I've had this one for a while. My cat too.
Oh, it's a cat.
Oh, I thought
I saw it upside down, so I thought it was like a Thai symbol or something.
No, little kitty cat. But yeah, it's been a wake-up call in every area of my life. I don't think I can ever look at anything the same way.
What are some of the biggest learnings you've had?
Man, it's a similar thing when you ask someone who's done psychedelics what they take home, and they have a hard time articulating the lessons that they've learned, because the lessons sound the same as they would if you read them in a self-help book, but for some reason they're so much more poignant. And I think that's because the psychedelic experience is embodied. Mm-hmm. These lessons aren't just things that you read on a page. They're lessons that you fully experience through all of your sensory mechanisms.
Right.
And your brain, I think your brain actually imprints them differently than if they were read or given as advice to you by someone. Similarly, going through this experience, feeling as awful as I did, knowing that I could die, you're dancing with death on some level, and then coming out of it gives you some sense of self-confidence and joy about just everyday life that I don't think it could be acquired any other way. Maybe through lots of meditation. But
yeah. You stared death in the face and kicked its ass.
I wake up some days and I'm just I cry from really normal, silly things because I just feel so happy.
So amazing.
Yeah, so happy to be here. So happy to be able to breathe and climb a mountain and hang out with friends
Yeah.
and to feel good doing those things.
Yeah.
There's just so much gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And knowing you, I'm sure you have so many more big plans. So what's on your mind next, you know? Because like you could go in so many different directions now. I mean, this movie, people need to see this movie. This movie is a game changer. People are probably asking, are you going to do another documentary? People would love to see more from you on this or on a different topic or...
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see myself doing another documentary. I have a few ideas. I have a development deal with National Geographic, so that's exciting, and I'll be sending some fun new ideas their way this year. We'll see what happens with that. But I don't know. I mean, the honest answer is a month ago I didn't know if I was going to be on this really challenging drug for another year, and so it was kind of just like I couldn't look ahead more than 2 feet. I couldn't see ahead more than 2 feet ahead in front of me, and now I have this wide open space where, yes, I have to still do these things to get to the point where hopefully I'm in remission in 2 years, but I can get back to normal people life, work things, and microphone. And so right now I'm just taking the time to, almost like I did right before my album, I'm cleaning my life up, playing catch up with things that sort of slipped through the cracks over the last year and a half, and meanwhile taking stock in things that I find interesting, exciting, and I know that at some point an avenue or an opportunity will open up along one of those paths that makes sense, but I'm not racing to do something right now.
That's
like
really
genuinely
fascinating. Yeah, so it
just
sounds like
kind of in the ideation /
maybe less pressure
appreciation.
now because you're just enjoying, you know,
Yes.
every day, every moment.
Yes, and I know that something
not having
will,
that feeling you have to like race to get more content out or whatever.
No, and at some point I'm going to have to re-enter the game of life like a responsible adult and figure things out. But in the meantime, I'm just really trying to appreciate every moment that I have right now with my friends and my family, and just experiencing the beauty of life through that lens right now. That's all I'm doing. That's my job right now.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I know I speak for many, many people when I say I'm really happy to hear that things are going well, and as not just a friend, but a fan.
Thanks.
No rush, but I'm super excited to see what you do next, as the things you've done in the past have been so fascinating and unique in such different ways and so eye-opening.
Thank you.
As far as what we can all do next, what could be in the future for all of us as this crazy, like, technological world unfolds.
It's so true.
And so fascinating, too, that it feels like this experience has like opened even more appreciation of just humanity and life that has nothing to do with the intelligence and cyborgs and artificial, but also made possible by advances in technology that increased the effectiveness of treatments from 15 years ago.
Yeah. It's so weird. That's I get to see it firsthand, experience it all firsthand. But yes, I do. I have an incredible appreciation for the delicateness that is being human, and anything else is bonus at this point.
Thanks so much for watching. If you want to hear a story that's even wilder than that one, click here. You only have 5 seconds though. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!